Please, just make it fast, the Apache girl said. The rancher stood still, then did the unthinkable. The morning sun rose slowly over the wide, dusty plains of the ranch. The sky was a soft mix of orange and pale blue, and the air smelled faintly of grass and earth. The rancher, a man known in the county for his calm and steady nature, was already awake, moving quietly among his cattle. His boots sank into the warm dirt as he walked, checking each animal with care. Every movement was deliberate, every glance careful. Years of experience had taught him to notice even the smallest change in behavior or health. The land was his home, his responsibility, and he took it seriously. It was quiet, almost too quiet. Usually the morning was filled with the low calls of cows and the rustling of the wind through dry grass. But today there was a tension in the air that he could feel in his chest, like a subtle warning. He had just reached the edge of the ranch when his phone rang, breaking the calm. He wiped his hands on his jeans and answered, expecting it to be a routine call from a neighbor or a supplier. Instead, a voice on the other end was trembling. Please, just make it fast, said the young Apache girl. Her voice was steady but carried urgency, a quiet intensity that made the rancher stop in his tracks. He didn't know exactly what had happened, but the tone alone was enough to alert him. There was no time to waste. Where are you? He asked, keeping his voice calm, steady, as he had done with every emergency in his life. She gave him directions, describing the path in a way that only someone familiar with the land could. Her words painted a picture of the rocky terrain, the narrow paths, and the small creek that ran through the area. He listened closely, committing every detail to memory. He knew the land well, but following her instructions exactly was important. She knew the terrain from her perspective, and that perspective could make all the difference. Without a second thought, he grabbed his hat and coat, mounted his horse, and urged it forward. The rancher had faced many challenges on the land before, but something about this call felt different. He wasn't going blindly into danger. He was responding to someone's urgent need. That thought gave him focus. His horse's hooves struck the ground with a steady rhythm, kicking up small clouds of dust as they moved. As he rode, he thought about the girl. He had seen her before in the nearby Apache community, strong-willed, brave, and intelligent. She had grown up in a world where respect and courage were not just admired but necessary for survival. Now, hearing her voice so urgent, so almost pleading, made him feel a strange combination of concern and responsibility. Didn't know exactly what awaited him, but he trusted that whatever it was, he could help. The landscape around him was both beautiful and unforgiving. Rolling plains stretched as far as the eye could see, broken occasionally by clusters of trees or jagged rocks. The rancher's eyes scanned everything: the land, the skies, the path ahead. Experience had taught him that the smallest detail could mean the difference between safety and danger. The wind carried the scent of dust and wildflowers, but there was another scent too, faint and unfamiliar, a hint that something was off. He rode for what felt like hours, following the girl's instructions carefully. Every turn, every small creek, every rise in the land mattered. The sun climbed higher, casting long shadows behind the rocks and trees. Despite the urgency, there was a strange peace in the rhythm of the ride. The rancher's mind was sharp, focused entirely on the task at hand. He thought of what could be waiting for him, perhaps an accident, a lost animal, or some natural danger. He prepared for each possibility, knowing that panic would not help anyone. Finally, he saw her. She stood alone on a small rise framed by the sunlight, her hair blowing slightly in the wind. Her eyes met his as he approached, and there was a mixture of fear and determination there. She did not run or cry out, she simply waited. That alone spoke volumes to the rancher. He dismounted, tying his horse to a nearby tree, and approached her slowly. Every step was measured, careful, respectful. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. "I need help," she said, her voice quiet but steady. "Something is coming, and I can't handle it alone." He nodded. Great. He had expected danger, but her words confirmed it. She didn't need someone to tell her what to do. She needed someone strong enough to act when action was required. He glanced around, taking in the terrain, the rocks, the path behind and ahead. The land itself was beautiful, but could be unforgiving. The rancher knew that every second mattered. "What is it?" he asked, wanting to understand the situation fully. Psst. Her eyes darted nervously toward the horizon. "There's a storm coming. Or maybe something else. I don't know exactly, but it's dangerous. I tried to manage it, but I can't." The rancher's mind worked quickly. A storm, or any natural threat in this rugged land could be deadly if not handled correctly. But it wasn't just about the land, it was about her. She had asked him for help, and he couldn't turn away. He adjusted his hat, squinted at the horizon, and then looked back at her. "Stay close to me," he said. "I'll get us through this." She nodded. There was relief in her expression, but also tension. The rancher could see it in the set of her jaw, the way her hands clenched slightly. He led her toward a safer path he had noticed earlier, one that would give them some protection. Step by step they moved, both aware of the land and the urgency. Every sound, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of a bird, was amplified in the quiet tension around them. As they walked, the rancher asked her questions, calmly, gently. "Did anyone else know you were here?" "No," she said. "I didn't want anyone else involved. I thought I could manage, but I was wrong." Her honesty struck him. She was proud, capable, and used to handling things herself, but she recognized when she needed help. That realization alone made him respect her even more. He glanced at her as they moved through a narrow passage between rocks. She was tense but alert, watching the land, ready to act. Suddenly, a strong gust of wind blew across the plain, carrying dust and dry leaves. The rancher held his coat tighter, keeping a careful eye on the sky. He knew that the land could change quickly, that danger could appear without warning, but he also knew that his experience and calmness could help them navigate through it. They reached a small clearing and the rancher stopped for a moment. He looked at her and nodded. "We're going to be okay, but we have to keep moving." "I need you to trust me completely." "I do," she said. Her voice was small but firm. That simple exchange, built on trust and understanding, created a bond that didn't need words. They were two people from different worlds, yet facing the same danger, relying on each other completely. The rancher took the lead again, guiding her through the rocks, the brush, and the uneven ground. Breath. He kept her safe, scanning the horizon, listening for any signs of the approaching threat. Time seemed to stretch, each minute filled with careful movement and quiet tension. The rancher's mind worked on multiple levels: the land, the potential threat, the girl's safety. He had faced dangers before, yes, but never with someone so dependent on him yet so capable in her own right. The contrast fascinated him. Breath. She had strength, courage, and wisdom, and yet she had asked for help when it mattered most. Finally, they reached a small rise that offered a better view of the surroundings. The rancher stopped and looked around. The threat, whatever it was near. He could feel it in the air, see the subtle changes in the landscape. but he also saw the determination in the girl's eyes, and that gave him a sense of calm. Together, they could face whatever was coming. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility but also the clarity that came with action. "We'll handle this," he said quietly, more to himself than to her. She looked at him, and for the first time, there was a hint of a smile, but relief mixed with fear. But she trusted him, and that trust, the rancher knew, could make all the difference. The sun climbed higher, shadows moving across the land, and the rancher stood ready. Whatever was coming, they would face it together. And in that quiet moment before action, the story held its breath, waiting for the next move that would test courage, skill, and trust. The rancher and the Apache girl paused on the small rise, taking in the land around them. From this vantage point, the rancher could see the rolling plains stretching into the distance, the rocky hills and the narrow paths cutting through patches of grass and brush. But his eyes were drawn to something unusual, a sudden change in the weather. Dark clouds had begun to gather on the horizon, moving faster than normal, as if racing toward them. The wind shifted too, carrying the dry scent of the plains mixed with a faint, sharp smell that made his skin prickle. This doesn't feel right," the rancher said, his voice calm but firm. He had been through storms, fires, and the harshness of the land countless times, but there was a subtle danger in the air that went beyond weather breaths. He looked at the Apache girl, noticing the tension in her posture, the tight grip she had on the small pack she carried.
"I think it's coming closer," she said, her voice low but steady.
"I tried to handle it myself, but it's bigger than I thought." The rancher nodded. He trusted her instincts. She knew the land and its secrets better than anyone. She had grown up navigating its challenges, and if she felt danger approaching, it was real. He scanned the land for any signs. Rocks shifted strangely in the wind. Distant trees swayed with unusual intensity, and even the birds seemed to have disappeared, leaving the sky eerily silent. "We'll find a safe spot, but we need to move now." They began walking carefully down a narrow path between the rocks. The rancher led the way, keeping his eyes sharp for anything unusual. The girl followed closely, her steps cautious but quick. As they moved, the wind picked up, carrying small pebbles and dust that stung their skin. It was uncomfortable, but neither of them stopped. Every movement counted. Along the path, the rancher noticed signs of recent activity. Broken branches, disturbed dirt, footprints not made by any animal he knew. His instinct sharpened. Something had passed through this area recently. He glanced at the girl. "Did you see anyone else here?" he asked quietly.
"No," she said.
"I don't think anyone else is around. But whatever it is, it's powerful." Dispenser. "I can feel it." Her words gave him pause. He had faced danger many times, but there was something different here, a sense that this was bigger than anything ordinary. Yet he did not panic. He had learned long ago that calmness and clear thinking were more valuable than fear.
He adjusted his pack, took a deep breath, and led them forward step by step.
The wind suddenly gusted stronger, whipping through the path and bending the sparse trees. The girl stumbled slightly but caught herself on a rock. The rancher reached out instinctively, steadying her. Her hands brushed, and for a moment, the world seemed to narrow down to just the two of them, facing the unknown together.
"Thanks," she whispered, her eyes meeting his for a brief moment.
There was fear, yes, but also trust. They continued down the path until they reached a small clearing surrounded by rocks high enough to provide some shelter from the wind. The rancher stopped and scanned the area carefully. He knew that staying in the open would be dangerous, but this natural shelter could give them a chance to prepare. Breaths. He turned to the girl. "Stay here." I'm going to check ahead, make sure it's safe, he said. No, she replied quickly. We need to stick together. I don't want to be left alone. Her courage was clear, but so was her understanding of danger. She knew she couldn't face it alone, yet she wasn't frozen by fear. All right, he said. We'll go together, carefully. They moved forward again, stepping lightly over rocks and patches of grass. The wind howled around them now, carrying with it the distant rumble of thunder. The rancher's eyes caught the first flashes of lightning far in the distance, illuminating the landscape briefly before fading again. It was getting closer, and the tension in the air grew. Suddenly, a loud crack echoed across the plains. The girl flinched, and the rancher instinctively pulled her closer behind a rock. A large branch from a nearby tree had broken, falling to the ground with a loud thud. It's starting, the rancher said quietly. Whatever's coming, we need to act fast. He looked around, assessing the terrain for the safest route. He needed a place that could protect them from both the storm and any other threat that might appear. Narration. He spotted a narrow ravine not far from where they stood, surrounded by rocks that could shield them from the wind and rain. We'll move there, he said. Follow me closely. The girl nodded, her eyes wide but determined. She moved carefully behind him, trusting his judgment completely. Breath. As they made their way toward the ravine, the wind grew stronger, pushing against them with force. Small rocks and debris tumbled down the slopes, and the rancher's focus sharpened. Every step had to be precise. One misstep could lead to injury, or worse. Halfway to the ravine, the ground beneath them shook slightly. Both stopped, their eyes scanning the horizon. Another crack, louder this time, reverberated through the plains. The rancher realized that the storm, or whatever else was approaching, was moving faster than they had anticipated. He turned to the girl. Hold on to me, he said. We're going to run the rest of the way. To stay low and stay close. They sprinted the remaining distance, ducking under overhanging rocks and leaping over small gaps. The wind tore at their clothing and hair, but they pressed on, driven by the urgency of the moment. When they finally reached the ravine, the rancher helped the girl down onto the ground, shielding her with his body from the worst of the wind and debris. They crouched together, breathing heavily, as the storm, or whatever it was, raged around them. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the jagged rocks and the wide plains beyond. The sound of the wind was deafening, carrying with it the smell of dust, wet earth, and something unfamiliar, sharp and intense. The girl's eyes were wide, but she did not panic. I didn't think it would come so fast, she said, her voice steady despite the fear in her eyes. Neither did I, the rancher admitted. But we're here now, and we'll get through it. Stay calm, and stay with me. Perhaps for a few moments they simply waited, listening to the storm around them. The rancher's mind raced, thinking of every possible danger and how to respond. He checked the ground, the rocks, and the paths leading out of the ravine. He had to ensure that once the worst of the storm passed, they could continue safely. The girl shifted slightly, brushing dirt from her sleeve. I thought I could handle it alone, she said softly, but I was wrong. The rancher looked at her and nodded. It's not weakness to ask for help. It's strength to recognize when you need it. She looked up at him, a mix of relief and respect in her eyes. That moment, quiet and simple, strengthened their bond. They were no longer just two people facing danger. They were a team, relying on each other to survive. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the direction they had come. The rancher tensed, listening carefully. The girl looked at him, her eyes sharp. What was that? She asked. Could be debris falling or something else, he said cautiously. Stay low." They crouched behind a larger rock, peering through a small gap. A tree, weakened by the wind, crashed to the ground nearby, sending up a cloud of dust. The rancher exhaled slowly. "Nothing we can't handle," he said, trying to reassure both her and himself. Minutes passed, each one stretching endlessly as the storm continued to roar. They shared quiet words, planning their next move, discussing the safest way to navigate back once the worst had passed. The rancher explained the terrain, pointing out safer paths and warning of hidden dangers like loose rocks or sudden drops. The girl listened carefully, absorbing every detail. Finally, the wind began to die down slightly, though the sky was still dark and ominous. The rancher stood cautiously, extending a hand to help the girl to her feet. "We need to keep moving," he said. "It's not over yet, but the worst is behind us." Trusting him completely, together they began to move out of the ravine. Step by careful step, their bodies tired but alert. Browned, every sound, every movement was a reminder that danger was never far away in this rugged land. As they walked, the rancher realized something important. This experience was more than just surviving a storm. It was about trust, courage, and understanding. The girl had faced fear head-on, and he had acted without hesitation to protect her. In that moment, the bond between them strengthened in a way that would last long after the storm passed. By the time they reached slightly safer ground, the rancher could see a small opening in the plains where they could catch their breath. They paused, leaning against rocks, watching the dark clouds slowly move away. The girl looked at him, exhaustion and relief mixed in her expression. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I couldn't have done this without you."
The rancher shook his head, a small smile touching his lips.
"You're stronger than you think. We just had to do it together." And for the first time since the morning began, there was a sense of calm, though the tension of what had just happened lingered. They both knew the day was not over, but they had survived the immediate danger, and that was enough. For now. The sun had begun to dip lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the plains. The air was still tense, charged with the memory of the storm that had passed just moments before. The rancher and the Apache girl stood on slightly higher ground, surveying the land. Though the immediate danger seemed to have moved on, he could feel in his bones that this was not the end. Nature could be unpredictable, and so could life in the remote stretches of the ranch. The girl shifted her weight from one foot to the other, her eyes scanning the horizon. "I don't know if it's over," she said softly. Breath. "Something doesn't feel right." The rancher nodded. He had learned long ago that instincts like hers were rarely wrong. He studied the land, noticing small movements in the brush, the distant hills, and even the way the light hit the rocks. Then he saw it, a subtle but distinct shift, a shadow moving faster than it should, and the unmistakable sound of breaking branches in the distance. "Stay close," he said, his voice low but firm. "We might still have trouble." The girl moved immediately, matching his pace. They both knew that whatever was coming required speed, focus, and courage. The rancher's mind raced through possibilities. Could it be another storm? Or maybe an animal caught in the chaos of the earlier wind? He didn't have time to guess. The only thing that mattered was protecting the girl and keeping them both safe. As they moved toward a denser part of the brush, a sudden flash caught his eye. A rock slide. He wasn't sure, but it forced him to act instantly. Without thinking twice, he grabbed the girl's arm and pulled her behind a large boulder. Dust and small stones tumbled around them. The girl's eyes widened in fear, but the rancher's calm voice cut through it. "Hold still. Don't panic," he said. His hand rested lightly on her shoulder, steadying her. She nodded, trusting him completely. The threat revealed itself slowly. From the hill above, a wild horse, frightened and panicked, came barreling down, its eyes wide and nostrils flaring. The animal had likely been caught in the chaos of the storm earlier and had lost control. Its speed and power were dangerous. If it reached the girl, she could be seriously hurt. Brave. The rancher assessed the situation quickly. The horse was coming straight toward them, and there was no time to move out of the path. The rancher's heart pounded, but his mind was clear. He knew what he had to do. He moved in front of the girl, placing himself between her and the charging animal, both. His arms stretched out slightly, signaling calm to the horse, while his feet dug into the dirt for balance. The girl froze, fear etched on her face, but she stayed behind him, trusting that he would protect her. In that moment, time seemed to slow. The rancher's training, his experience with animals, and his calmness all came together. He spoke softly to the horse, a low, steady sound meant to calm it. He shifted his weight, guiding the animal toward a narrow path between rocks. Break. Step by step, he redirected its energy, channeling the horse's panic into motion that kept them safe. The girl watched, almost in disbelief, as the rancher risked himself without hesitation. She could see the tension in his muscles, the concentration in his eyes. And yet there was no fear in his movements, only determination. Her admiration for him deepened. He wasn't just protecting her physically. He was showing courage, skill, and calm in a situation that could have gone terribly wrong. Finally, the horse veered off the path, moving past them without harm. The rancher exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of adrenaline leaving his body. The girl's hand touched his arm, trembling slightly. You saved me," she whispered. "I told you we'd get through it," he said, his voice steady. "But we need to keep moving. There might be more." She nodded, her fear mingling with relief and respect. They continued through the rocky terrain, navigating carefully around fallen branches, small pools of water, and scattered debris from the earlier storm.
Every step was deliberate. The rancher knew that one wrong move could result in injury or worse.
The girl mirrored his movements, learning from his calm, measured approach. As they climbed a small ridge, the wind began to pick up again, but this time it was different. It wasn't the storm's residual force. It was sudden, sharp, and accompanied by a distant rumble that wasn't thunder. The rancher's instincts told him to be cautious. He slowed their pace, scanning the horizon for the source. "I don't like this," he muttered. "Something else is coming." The girl's eyes narrowed.
"What do you mean?"
He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he gestured for her to stay close and moved ahead slightly to get a better view.
Then he saw it. A section of the ridge ahead was unstable, rocks shifting under pressure. A small landslide had begun, likely triggered by the storm and the wild horse earlier. If it continued, the path they needed to follow could collapse, leaving them stranded or worse. Without hesitation, the rancher made a decision that surprised even himself. He would secure the path for the girl, no matter the risk. He grabbed a sturdy branch and tested the rocks, finding a stable line to guide her safely across. He moved, careful but quick, ensuring each footfall was secure. The girl followed closely, her trust in him absolute. Halfway across, a rock shifted unexpectedly. The rancher's balance wavered, but he steadied himself, planting his feet firmly and adjusting his stance. Desperation. He reached for the girl's hand, guiding her across the unstable section. She hesitated for a moment, fear flashing in her eyes, but his calm reassured her. "You can do this," he said. "Trust me." She took a deep breath and followed his lead. Together, they moved past the most dangerous section, reaching stable ground once more. The girl exhaled, relief washing over her. "You didn't have to do that," she said softly, her voice filled with awe. "I did," the rancher replied simply. It was the only way to keep you safe. They paused for a moment, both catching their breath. The wind had calmed slightly, but the tension in the air remained. The rancher knew that nature was unpredictable, and while they had survived one danger, there could always be another. Back. As they moved on, the girl began to talk about her experiences earlier in the day. She explained how she had tried to handle the situation herself, how she had navigated the land, and how she had hoped to manage without anyone's help. The rancher listened carefully, impressed by her knowledge, courage, and honesty.
He realized that her bravery was not just in facing danger, but in recognizing when she needed assistance.
You're strong, he said finally. But strength isn't just about facing danger alone. It's also knowing when to ask for help.
She smiled faintly, a mixture of gratitude and respect in her eyes.
I've learned that today, she admitted. Their conversation was interrupted by a sudden noise from the ridge above. The rancher's body tensed immediately. A large rock had begun to tumble down, dislodged by the unstable ground. Without hesitation, he moved in front of the girl again, using his body to shield her from the falling debris. The rock struck the ground near them with a loud crash, but neither was harmed. The girl looked at him, awe and relief mixing in her expression. I don't know how you do it, she said, breaths. I just focus on what needs to be done, he replied, and I make sure you're safe. They continued their journey carefully, moving toward a flatter section of land where they could rest and plan their next steps. The rancher stayed alert, scanning the horizon for any further signs of danger. The girl followed his lead, absorbing every movement, every cautious step. She realized that survival wasn't just about speed or strength. It was about awareness, patience, and trust. Finally, they reached a small plateau with a view of the plains stretching far into the distance. They paused, leaning against a rock, exhausted but relieved. The rancher looked at the girl, noticing the weariness in her eyes, but also the determination. She had faced fear, trusted him completely, and shown courage that matched his own. You did well today, he said quietly. Great.
We handled a lot together. She nodded, her voice soft but firm. I couldn't have done it without you.
You risked yourself for me. The rancher shrugged slightly, a small smile touching his lips. Sometimes, doing the right thing means taking a risk. Today, that risk was worth it.
They sat in silence for a moment, watching the sun dip lower, casting golden light across the plains.
The storm had passed, the immediate dangers had been faced, and a bond had formed between them, one built on trust, courage, and mutual respect.
Even as the day ended, the rancher knew their journey wasn't over.
But in that quiet moment, they had survived the unthinkable. And together they had proven that courage, skill, and trust could overcome even the most dangerous challenges the land could throw at them. The sun had begun its slow descent, painting the plains in shades of gold and amber. The air, once tense and heavy with storm, now carried a calm, almost peaceful quality. The rancher and the Apache girl remained on the small plateau, their bodies tired, their clothes dusted with dirt and debris, but their spirits high. They had survived the storm, the wild horse, and the treacherous terrain. The ordeal had been intense, but it had also brought something unexpected. A bond that went beyond words, a connection forged through courage, trust, and mutual respect. The girl sat down on a flat rock, brushing dust from her clothes, her fingers trembling slightly from the adrenaline of the past hours. I still can't believe how much just happened, she said softly, her voice filled with awe and a trace of lingering fear. I thought I could manage it alone, but I was wrong. Right. The rancher sat beside her, careful to give her space while also keeping close enough to offer comfort and protection. "There's no shame in needing help," he said gently. "It doesn't make you weak. It makes you human." She looked at him, her eyes reflecting the last light of the sun. There was something in his calm, steady presence that reassured her more than words ever could. "I've never met anyone like you," she admitted. "Someone who just acts without hesitation, panic, no matter what comes at them." The rancher shrugged, a small, modest gesture. "I faced danger many times," he said. "But today was different. Today, it was about keeping someone else safe. And that made all the difference." She nodded, understanding fully. The past hours had been terrifying, yes, but they had also shown her the true meaning of courage, trust, and selflessness. It wasn't just about surviving a storm or avoiding danger. It was about acting with purpose, caring for others, and making choices that mattered. The rancher stood slowly, stretching his stiff muscles from the long day. "We should start moving back," he said. "The night will come soon, and we need to find a safer place to rest." The girl stood as well, brushing herself off. "I can do it," she said, her voice steady. "I'm ready." He smiled faintly, recognizing her growing confidence. "Good. But we'll go together, step by step." Breath. "No rushing." As they made their way down from the plateau, the rancher led the way carefully, his eyes scanning the land for any hidden dangers. The girl followed closely, matching his cautious pace. The sun was lower now, and shadows stretched across the plains, making the terrain appear both beautiful and treacherous. Every step required attention, but neither of them faltered. They had learned to trust each other completely. Along the path, the girl began to talk more openly about herself. She told the rancher about her life in the Apache community, about the lessons she had learned from her family and elders, and about the strength that came from growing up in a land that demanded resilience. Her words were quiet, thoughtful, and full of meaning. The rancher listened carefully, realizing how much courage it took for her to share these personal thoughts after the intense experiences of the day. "You've faced so much," he said finally, his voice gentle. "And yet you never gave up. That's remarkable." She smiled faintly, a mix of pride and humility in her expression.
"I learned from the land," she said.
"Desperentally. From my family, from people who taught me to survive and stay strong. But I also learned something else today, that it's okay to trust someone else to help when you need it." The rancher nodded, impressed by her insight. "Exactly. Strength isn't just about facing things alone. Break. Sometimes it's about knowing when to rely on others." They continued walking, the sun now dipping behind the distant hills. The golden light bathed the plains in warmth, but it also reminded them that night would come soon, bringing with it the need for caution and rest. The rancher guided the girl toward a small clearing near the edge of the ranch, a place he knew would be safe to camp for the night. Once there, they set down their packs and took a moment to rest. The rancher fetched some water from a nearby stream, and the girl drank thirstily, relief evident in her eyes. They sat together, quiet for a few minutes, listening to the gentle sounds of the land, the rustling of grass, the distant call of a bird, the soft gurgle of the stream. It was a peaceful moment, a stark contrast to the chaos and danger of earlier. "You know," the girl said softly, breaking the silence, "I don't think I've ever felt this safe. Not just physically, but emotionally too."
You make it feel like everything will be okay, even when it's not.
The rancher glanced at her, a thoughtful expression on his face. "That's because I believe we can handle whatever comes together. Fear is natural, But courage comes from acting despite the fear. She looked at him, admiration shining in her eyes. I think I understand that now, more than ever. The rancher smiled faintly, feeling a quiet pride, not in himself, but in the strength she had shown. You've learned a lot today, he said, but the most important lesson is that trust and courage go hand in hand. The girl nodded, a small smile forming on her lips. Thank you, she said again, for everything. For not hesitating, for protecting me, for showing me what true courage looks like.
He shook his head modestly. I just did what anyone would do if they could.
But the girl could see that his actions had gone beyond simple duty. They had been selfless, brave, and deliberate. In that moment, she realized that some people had a rare kind of courage, the kind that didn't just protect themselves but lifted others from danger too. As the sun disappeared completely behind the hills, the rancher and the girl prepared to settle for the night. He built a small fire, careful to keep it contained, while she organized their supplies. The warmth of the fire and the quiet crackle of flames provided comfort after the long, tense day. They ate a simple meal, sharing the few provisions they had, and spoke quietly about the lessons of the day, the beauty of the land, and the importance of resilience and courage. You know, the rancher said after a moment, looking into the fire, days like this, they remind you what really matters. Not the danger, not the chaos, but the people you care about and the trust you place in each other. The girl nodded, her eyes reflecting the flickering firelight.
I will remember this day forever, she said softly.
Not because of the storm or the horse or anything dangerous, but because of you. Because of how you acted, how you trusted me, and how we faced it together. The rancher glanced at her, a quiet smile touching his lips. And I'll remember it too, he said. Not just the danger, but how strong and brave you were. How much you trusted me. That's worth more than anything else. Night settled over the plains, the stars beginning to shine in the darkening sky. The fire crackled softly between them, providing warmth and comfort. Both the rancher and the Apache girl sat quietly, reflecting on the day's events. The air was calm now, peaceful, but filled with the sense of accomplishment and respect for one another. Finally, the rancher stood and stretched. We should get some rest, he said. Tomorrow will be another day, and we need our strength. The girl nodded, settling closer to the fire for warmth. But, thank you again. But, thank you again, Britt, truly. He smiled faintly, nodding. Des back. No thanks needed, just stay strong. But you already are in ways you might not even realize.
He sat in silence for a few more minutes, watching the flames flicker and the stars shine above.
The day had tested them in ways neither could have expected, but it had also revealed something important. Trust, courage, and the bonds formed in moments of crisis could last far longer than the storm itself. Eventually, they lay down, using blankets and packs to make themselves comfortable. The girl drifted off to sleep first, her breathing deep and steady. The rancher stayed awake for a while longer, watching the stars, reflecting on the day and feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment. He had faced danger, acted without hesitation, and protected someone who needed him. And, in return, he had gained respect, trust, and a deep appreciation for the girl's courage. As the night deepened, the rancher finally closed his eyes, letting the calm of the land soothe his mind. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, perhaps, but for now, they had survived together. They had proven that courage, skill, and trust could overcome even the most dangerous situations, and that a bond formed in adversity could last a lifetime. And in that quiet, starlit night, the rancher and the Apache girl slept peacefully, knowing that they had faced the unthinkable and come through it stronger, wiser, and more connected than ever.